At my mother's birthday dinner, my father pointed directly at me and declared, "This guest is no longer welcome." My cousins burst into laughter. My sister lifted her glass in a toast. I finally smirked and replied, "Brian, dinner's on your tab." Then I walked out. About 30 minutes later, the waiter returned with the bill, which was $2,800. My sister called me, shouting angrily. I refused to pay. That was when the angry phone calls from the rest of my family started flooding in. It ended up being the last birthday celebration I ever joined with that side of the family. The last occasion I allowed them to pull me into their performance of courtesy, fake smiles, and forced gratitude. At the time I didn't realize it, but something inside me broke that night. Something I had held together for many years without understanding how much strain it was under. My mother's 62nd birthday was already turning into one of those evenings I was desperate to avoid. She chose an elegant Italian restaurant downtown that was impossible to park near and filled with loud chatter about hedge funds and yoga retreats. Everyone pretended that this was a special indulgence, but I knew exactly how it would unfold. They would order whatever they desired, behave as if they were nobility, and then sit back when the check arrived, ignoring the waiter who stood by me because that was how they viewed me, not as the middle daughter or the devoted sister, but merely as a source of money, a backup plan, the woman with no children, no spouse, and apparently no personal life or important priorities. My brother ran a struggling real estate business and had 3 children. My sister was constantly moving from one job to another, always struggling to cover rent payments, just a paycheck away from breaking down to our parents. Meanwhile, my parents had long retreated into their own fantasy, convinced that I existed only to compensate for what the others lacked. But this time, I arrived with a purpose. I brought a modest gift for my mother, a photography book from a place she once dreamed of visiting but never did. It was nothing extravagant, yet it carried meaning. I also made a deliberate choice not to bring my wallet. I wanted to see what would happen if for once I did not cover the bill as if I were some invisible servant. Everyone acted as if nothing was different. The dinner began ordinarily. Conversations overlapped and competed. My father ordered the priciest bottle of wine, then pretended not to notice the prices listed. My sister loudly complained about her stress, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. My cousins, who barely knew my mother, came mostly for free food and social media posts. I remained quiet, simply observing. Right after dessert, my father stood and tapped his glass. He delivered a speech saying how proud he was of our family, expressing gratitude towards my mother and emphasizing how fortunate he felt to have raised such resilient and united children. Then his gaze locked on me. He declared, "This guest no longer belongs here." Silence blanketed the table for a brief moment. Then my cousins burst into laughter as if it was a joke. My sister raised her glass and said, "Finally." I glanced around, stunned by the coldness I witnessed. No one appeared puzzled. Nobody asked what exactly was going on. It was not a joke. Everything was deliberate. So I smiled and said, "Then dinner is your treat." I stood up and left. I did not look back. I did not cause a scene. I simply walked 2 blocks to my car and drove home quietly. It felt unusual. I was calm, as if I had just exited a burning building and only now realized how intense the heat had been inside. About half an hour later, the waiter brought them the check, which amounted to $2,800. That is when the calls began. First, it was my sister with 6 missed calls, then my brother, then my father, who almost never called. After that came the texts saying things like, "You better not be serious right now. We cannot pay for this. You always cover things for family. You just walked away. Are you punishing Mom? It is her birthday, and I swear you will regret this." I turned off my phone and poured a drink. It was not just about the bill. That evening, everything became clear to me. They did not invite me to celebrate. They invited me to pay for their celebration. When they thought I might stop being useful, they decided to embarrass me publicly with guests, cousins, and my mother's former co-worker watching. At around 10:30 in the evening, someone rang my doorbell. I checked the camera. It was my parents and my brother. I did not even have time to decide whether to open the door. They got inside when a neighbor came out, and by the moment I reached the hallway, they were already there. They entered the room as if they owned the place, as if the old script was still in play, and I was merely forgetting my lines. "We need to talk," my father said. Our conversation lasted for hours, but it was not the kind of dialogue that brings resolution. That evening marked only the beginning. They knocked not with the hesitation of guilt, but with the certainty of entitlement. By the time I opened the door, they had already crossed halfway inside. My father moved as though he had rehearsed his words on the way over. My mother avoided looking at me directly. My brother came in last, silent and with his hands in his pockets. No one greeted me. "We just want to understand what happened," my father started, as if I had thrown a tantrum or ruined a celebration. My mother quickly added that my leaving had spoiled the mood and hurt people. She did not specify who, only that people were hurt. My brother expressed that it felt harsh how I left, as if I had turned private family tension into a public scandal. They surrounded me with guilt, like famished wolves. I asked what they expected me to do. Sit quietly and grin while they mocked me in front of others? Pretend it was all harmless family teasing? My father dismissed it as a joke and said I should not take everything so personally. My mother assured me my sister did not mean it the way it sounded. My brother insisted it was not about the words, but how I responded. That was when I understood they were not here to say sorry. Their purpose was to change the story. I had messed up the plan. I had lied. I was expected to take the blame, perhaps sulk a bit, and then silently hand over my credit card when the bill arrived. Their anger was not about me walking out. It was about me not paying beforehand. I left. When I stayed silent, they moved on to the next part of their usual routine. My father mentioned that things had been tight financially lately. My mother added that my sister's rent was going to increase soon, and it was weighing on her mind. My brother mumbled something about car repairs. It was subtle, but not really. This was the moment I was supposed to say, "I understand. Let me help." But I did not. I told them I was finished. That I could no longer be the one keeping everything together while receiving nothing but silent hostility and disrespect in return. I told them their words at that table crossed a boundary I had not even realized I was waiting for them to cross. They did cross it. My mother's expression fell, as if she had suddenly realized this was not about one meal. My father tried to keep control of the situation. He asked if I was ending the family connection because of a misunderstanding. My brother surprisingly stayed quiet. He appeared more uneasy than angry, like he had just understood he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I said I needed distance, a lot of it, and that I wanted them to leave. They did not shout. They just looked puzzled, as if I were something they could not comprehend. They were malfunctioning in a way nobody could figure out. But they left. When the door shut, it felt different. Final. The quiet that followed was like the stillness after you finally turn off a machine that has been buzzing quietly for years in the background of your life. The following morning, I logged into my bank account and noticed the automatic payment. Each month, $100 went toward my sister's rent. She never asked clearly. She only cried once months ago about losing her apartment, and somehow it became my problem to fix. I stopped the payment. No message, no warning. I did not owe her anything. She would find out soon. 4 days to be exact. And when she did, I knew exactly what the family's reaction would be. They would accuse. They would try to make me feel guilty. They would twist the story to make it seem like I was the one who changed, the one who abandoned them. That was when everything would begin to fall apart. 4 days later, the storm arrived just as expected. It began with a text from my sister. The rent was returned. What happened? Then came the call. I did not answer. She called again. Then again. After the seventh attempt, I finally silenced her number. An hour later, my mother called. She said, "Your sister is in tears. She might be evicted. She didn't know the payment would not arrive. Why didn't you tell her?" I did not answer that either because the truth was simple. I did not tell her because I did not owe her. For over a year, I had paid her rent every month without gratitude, without missing a single time. She never saw it as assistance. She treated me like a paycheck, like I was merely the unmarried, childless middle daughter whose sole purpose was to keep everyone else steady. When she raised a glass to my exile at that dinner, she had no idea she was also severing her own security. But I suppose they all believed I would eventually move past it, calm down, and revert to my usual role as before. Only this time, I did not. That evening, my sister came to my building. I refused to let her in. She stood outside, calling, texting, and sending voice messages as if she were trapped in a burning house. "I have nowhere else to go. Why would you do this to me? Are you seriously going to destroy my life over a dinner?" The irony was searing. I was not destroying her life. I was merely ceasing to save it. The following day, my father called. This time, he left a voicemail. "This is family. You do not withdraw support over something like this. You are better than that, right? I am better. I am responsible. I am reliable. I am the one who pays. I am the one who keeps silent when they disrespect me in public, because that is what the better one does." I did not reply. They did not give up. For 2 full days, my phone did not remain silent for longer than 10 minutes. They shifted between guilt, pity, and anger. My brother even sent me a brief message. "Do not punish the entire family because you are angry at her." That is when I realized they all believed this was about my sister. They failed to recognize what it truly was. Years of being relied upon to bear the burden while they complained about how difficult their lives were. So I made up my mind. I called my grandfather. He was not at the dinner. He is one of the few family members who still maintains some distance from all the chaos, mainly because he is the only one they continue to pretend to respect. I told him everything from the moment my dad pointed at me to the moment they entered my apartment acting as if I had done something unforgivable. I shared the details about the money, the rent, the manipulation, the entitlement. He did not interrupt. He simply listened. When I finished, he asked one question. "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Tell them the truth. Inform the rest of the family about what they failed to notice. Explain how they treat me. I am done protecting them." He did not argue. He said, "Okay." And just like that, the process of damage control began. Within 1 week, I started hearing things through extended family members, second cousins, aunts I barely talked to, that my parents were furious, my sister was heartbroken, and I was twisting the story to make them look bad. But here is the thing. I did not alter anything. I simply stopped hiding it. After I spoke to my grandfather, I expected backlash. Maybe a new wave of guilt-ridden texts, or one of those dramatic voicemails where my mom sobs just enough to make you feel like a criminal. But nothing happened. 3 days of silence, then 4. I assumed they were regrouping, possibly trying to prepare a response. Before he could finish his thought, my phone suddenly vibrated with a Facebook message from Carla. Carla is one of my mother's nieces, which technically makes her my cousin, although we have never really been close. She is reserved, attentive, and always stayed in the background during family events. I used to believe she wasn't paying attention at all, but it turned out she noticed everything. Her message was straightforward. "Hey, I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. I always felt something was wrong with how they treated you. This caught me completely by surprise. I asked her how she knew, thinking it was just the usual gossip circulating. She quickly responded, "Your grandpa told everyone at brunch. He said it was time people learned the truth." Later I discovered that he did not just confide in a few people. Instead, he revealed the whole story at a large family brunch. The table was filled with extended relatives, including some I hadn't seen in many years. There was no warning or gentle introduction, just the blunt truth. He described the birthday dinner, what my father said, how my sister toasted my exclusion, and how they all expected me to pay $2,800 while publicly ridiculing me. Then he went on to explain how I had been covering my sister's rent for over a year. He mentioned how they had come into my house demanding explanations, never considering that maybe the problem was on their end. According to Carla, some relatives appeared shocked. A few older family members tried to defend my parents, suggesting there might be more to the story, but most stayed silent. Apparently, it was the way he presented everything that left people speechless. No anger, no dramatics, simply the plain truth. And in that space, those words carried a heavy weight I was unsure how to handle. Carla. I simply responded with, "Thank you." Later that evening, a message arrived from my father. "You embarrassed your mother." That was all. There were no questions, no recognition of what actually occurred, and no apology, just the assertion that I had made her look bad. That was the core issue. It was not about the rent, the money, or even the dinner. It was about control. They were losing it and spiraling into panic. I chose not to respond. 2 more days went by. Then a notification came from the building's front desk. I had a package. I had not ordered anything, so I assumed it was a mix-up with a delivery. But when I went to collect it, I found a medium-sized box taped haphazardly with no return label and my name scrawled in thick marker. Inside was a peculiar assortment of items. Some old shirts I had forgotten at my parents' place, a coffee mug from college days, a school photograph of me at 10 years old, and one of those dollar store cards that was otherwise blank except for a single line in the center. "And if this is what you want, then here it is." No signature, no context, just that sentence alone. It was petty and passive-aggressive, but it revealed everything I needed to understand. They were not remorseful. They were spinning the story to make me the one who abandoned them. I had become the antagonist in their rewritten narrative. I took the box and dropped it at the donation center nearby. I had no use for any of it. None of this was ever truly about the belongings. One night, I made it official. I exited every group chat, removed myself from all family message threads, blocked my sister, my father, my mother, and even my brother. I changed my phone number and updated my contact details only with the few relatives who treated me with respect. It was not dramatic or filled with emotion. It was simply necessary. I expected some backlash. Maybe they would show up at my place again or try to involve more people in the conflict. However, what followed surprised me more than anything else. They adapted quickly. About 1 week after I cut them off, I heard from Carla again. She sent me a screenshot from my sister's Instagram story. In the photo, my sister, my parents, and my brother were on a beach somewhere. They held matching drinks and wore forced smiles, accompanied by hashtags about family moments and well-deserved vacations. Apparently, my parents had resumed paying my sister's rent. More than that, they were traveling, posting pictures of meals and cocktails, and crafting captions that showed strength and happiness. The very people who claimed they could not make it without my financial support were now perfectly fine, even thriving. That's when it dawned on me. They were never really struggling. They had just been taking advantage of me because I allowed it. As I looked at the picture, I was speechless. There they were, my parents, my sister, and my brother posing on a beach far from home. Sunsets, cocktails, and hotel cabanas created the perfect backdrop. The caption included hashtags like "Finally Peace" and "Family Strong." My sister had tagged an upscale resort in Florida. I had no clear idea of what I was anticipating. Perhaps a sign that they were facing difficulties, or some indication that they missed me. But nothing of the sort. They appeared better than ever, as if nothing had occurred, as if I had never existed. The impact was unexpected. Not because I longed for them, I did not. At least not anymore. It was the ease of their reaction that struck me, the rapid pace. For countless years, they had created a whole narrative about how tough their lives were. My parents constantly tightening their belts, my sister always under pressure, and my brother doing his utmost with very little resources. Yet now they were drinking cold dairy drinks and grinning as though they had just been freed from captivity. I had not even been away for 2 weeks. That very evening, Carla sent me another message. This time, she included screenshots of texts my sister had been sharing with the extended family. In one message, she claimed that I unexpectedly stopped financial help and left her at risk of eviction. In another, she suggested I had been emotionally unstable for quite some time and was taking it out on the family by leaving them happy without me. The irony was almost striking. They were in a better place financially, emotionally, and socially without me, yet somehow I was cast as the villain for walking away. I did not reply to Carla immediately. I needed time to process it all. But the longer I reflected, the more obvious it became. I had spent years managing their reality, quietly covering expenses, never mentioning a word or telling anyone what I had done for them. Now that I was no longer there to control the narrative, they were twisting the story. They had learned one important lesson from me. Silence holds power. Yet now that same silence was turning against me. So I decided to put something into words. It was not an angry letter. It was not a rant. It was simply the honest truth from beginning to end. I included specific dates, amounts, and names. I described how I had been covering my sister's rent every single month for more than a year. How I had paid for 2 of my parents' vacations, including one they claimed was a gift from all their children. How my brother sent me grocery lists for his kids, and I quietly paid them without ever asking for repayment. I attached screenshots of payment confirmations not to embarrass anyone, but to prove it really happened. And I closed it like this. I did not walk away because I was furious. I walked away because I finally realized that being useful to people does not mean you are truly appreciated by them. I am not asking anyone to choose sides. I just refuse to keep deceiving myself by remaining silent. I sent this message to only 8 people, precisely 8. Those I knew were hearing the distorted story from my parents, the ones who had been liking those fake pictures from the beach and commenting things like, "So glad to see you smiling again." Most of them did not respond. But 2 replied. One was my cousin Nathan, who simply said, "I had no clue. I am sorry, Celine. That is a failure. Stand up." The other was my uncle, my mother's brother. We had not talked for years. His reply stunned me. He said he always wondered why parents treated their children like they owed them something. Now he finally understood. He thanked me for speaking out. Later that evening, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. I chose not to answer. Soon after, a voicemail arrived. It was my mother's voice, cold and sharp, lacking any warmth or apology. She said, "I hope you are satisfied. People are talking. You have brought shame to this family more than enough. You always knew how to manipulate the story to make yourself look good." Then she ended the message abruptly. That was everything she had to say. There was no mention of the facts I had shared, neither denial nor clarification, just anger that someone else had listened. Shortly after, my grandfather called. He had heard what I had revealed. I thought he might be angry or ask me to ease the situation, but his response surprised me. "You told the truth," he said. That is more than most people manage in their whole lives. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in many years. Not because they were finally unmasked or because I triumphed, but because at last, I was no longer pretending. I was free from guilt that was not mine to bear. And astonishingly, they were not collapsing without me. They were flourishing. The reality was that they had always possessed the resources and time. They simply chose not to invest them in themselves when I was ready to cover the costs. I was not the villain. Rather, I was merely the path out. Now they faced the need to find a replacement. The quiet period did not last very long. Roughly 14 days after I sent the message, a letter arrived by post. It was tangible, a genuine letter with no return address. The envelope was typed, made from thick white paper, resembling the kind used for wedding invitations. For a moment, I wondered if it was some kind of official notice. Perhaps they were pressing me with some kind of threat. But when I unfolded the paper, my eye caught the familiar handwriting, my father's. Yet the letter was not directed to me. It was a draft intended for another person, a relative connected to our grandfather's lineage. The message was a feeble effort to explain itself. It claimed that I had suffered a breakdown due to years of solitude, that bitterness had taken root because of prolonged isolation, and insisted they had done everything possible to help and support me. This letter was never actually sent. Somehow, it found its way into my mailbox. Maybe it was an error. Or perhaps a family member weary of deceit wanted me to uncover the truth. I may never discover the reason. What this did confirm was what I had already suspected. They were not merely letting go of me. Their aim was to erase my existence. They were not satisfied with my departure. They needed me to appear as the damaged one, not them. So I took decisive action. I dismantled the last remaining ties binding us. A storage unit I kept paying for, stuffed with decades of family clutter they've never retrieved. A mobile phone account my sister was still inexplicably attached to. I terminated it all, severed every connection, ended every service, and reassigned ownership of the few shared possessions I was legally able to detach myself from. Then, for the very first time since becoming an adult, I blocked my mother. I hesitated before pushing the button. Not because I felt she deserved any more chances. I did not hesitate because I anticipated the chaos it would unleash. Yet in the end, I simply blocked them and never turned back. The following days passed quietly, until something unexpected arrived. A message from my grandfather. It was brief, almost like a puzzle. They were panicking. They never expected you to go this far. I reached out to him, and he explained that once they realized I had completely cut all ties, no calls, no emails, no involvement, they began to fight among themselves. My father accused my sister of pushing too hard during dinner. My sister blamed my mother for exposing everything publicly. My brother tried to avoid the conflict, but secretly asked cousins if they thought I would ever reconcile. Then he said something surprising. "Your mother has been calling me, saying they want to talk again, but not to make amends. Their goal is to restore their reputation." That was the moment I understood I had made the right decision. Each of them, my mother, father, sister, and brother, had grown accustomed to manipulating people like pawns in a game. I was simply the one who refused to continue playing. They kept traveling, continued paying rent, and still smiled for photos, but their luster was fading. Others began to ask questions. People noticed the inconsistencies in their story. The harder they tried to protect their image, the clearer it became. They were not the victims. They were simply accustomed to never hearing the word no. Now they find themselves alone, and they are not pleased with it. It has been 3 months since I cut them off. No more calls, no letters, no deliveries. It feels as if I vanished completely. Honestly, this has been the most peaceful period I have experienced in several years. I did not realize how much chaos they introduced into my life until it was taken away. Yesterday, however, I received a call from Carla. She mentioned she bumped into my sister at the airport, of all places. My parents were there with her. Apparently, they were preparing for a trip to Costa Rica. Their activity on social media has decreased noticeably. The captions they post now are filled with vague messages about releasing toxic connections and discovering strength through hardship. It is obvious they are still attempting to control the narrative, yet a change is perceptible. Carla said there was no happiness behind it, just a sense of going through the motions. My sister appeared exhausted, not physically, but emotionally drained, as if the act they were putting on was beginning to weigh heavily on her. The most surprising detail Carla shared was that my mother inquired about me. She did not speak kindly but asked if I was still angry, if I remained in touch with others. Then she added something strange. She will come around. They always do. It feels like I am no longer myself, just a temporary rebellious version of Celine who will eventually fade away and slip back into the role they crafted for me. They still fail to understand that this is not a childish outburst. This is peace, and I do not plan to return. At least, I think I am done. What surprises them the most is that I have not attempted to return. I have not reached out with a message. I have not even opened the door or checked in to see how they are doing. That was always my way before. Despite the insults, the cold shoulders, the guilt trips, even when I felt like an outsider in my own family, I always came back. But this time, I did not. With each passing day, I believe they realize a little more that I am serious. I used to wonder if I would regret it, if there would be a moment when the silence became unbearable, when I missed them so much that I forgot all the pain. That moment never appeared. Instead, I found something I had not felt in many years: sharp clarity. I began to remember who I was before I became their safety net. Before I was the one who always understood, the one who let things slide, the one who could handle everything. I started planning for myself. I arranged a solo trip, nothing extravagant, just a week in the mountains without any signal or noise, just me. I began reading again, cooking again, reconnecting with friends I had let fade away because family drama drained me too much. I reclaimed my own space. I rearranged my apartment, cleared out closets full of other people's belongings, and started saying no. Firm and unapologetic no's to those who only appeared when they needed something. It felt like taking a breath after being submerged underwater for years. And somewhere within that stillness, I found something untamed: hope. Not for the sake of reconciliation, not for them to change, but for myself, to envision what life might be like without being filtered through their demands and moods. One afternoon, I met Brian to have coffee. We had not met in person since everything unfolded. He looked at me quietly for a moment before saying, "You seem lighter." I laughed and admitted I could feel it too. He shared more about what had been happening behind the scenes. Apparently, after I distanced myself, my parents attempted to gather some of the extended family to their side, but their plan failed. Too many had learned the truth. Too many had seen the proof. Too many recalled the small incidents they had previously overlooked. The cracks were becoming visible. Brian said the new narrative was that I was going through a difficult time and needed space to recover. It was their method of preserving appearances without accepting responsibility. "They still believe you will return," Brian mentioned. I nodded silently. They fail to see that there is nothing awaiting my return. Because the reality is, I did not just leave because of a bad night or a harsh remark. I stepped away from a system, a role, a script I never authored, but felt compelled to follow out of duty. Once I withdrew, I recognized it for what it truly was: a mechanism fueled by guilt, silence, and unspoken rules that only applied to me. They do not miss me. They miss what I provided for them: financial support, emotional effort, and silent tolerance. Perhaps deep inside they already understand that the person I used to be no longer exists. Just a few days ago, I received another message. This time, it came from my mother. It was not written by hand, nor was it typed. Instead, it was simply a folded sheet of paper slipped into my mailbox without any envelope. The sentence read, "We still love you no matter what you think." I held the note for a moment, contemplating. Love. What kind of love embarrasses you in public? What kind of love exploits you until you break, then casts you as the villain the moment you stand up and say you have had enough? For them, love is like a leash, a form of currency, a tool they offer only when you conform to their expectations. I folded the letter and threw it away, not out of anger, but because it no longer held any significance for me. I do not need their version of love anymore. I am creating something new, something genuine, something quiet, something that belongs entirely to me. It is astonishing how much freedom you gain when you stop trying to diminish yourself to fit inside the comfort zones of others. Previously, I would shrink during family conversations, suppress my thoughts, soften my expressions, and sugarcoat the truth. I believed this was maturity. I thought this was love. But in reality, it was just survival. Now that I am no longer just surviving their presence, I am discovering how to truly live. A few weeks back, I was walking through the farmer's market when I passed a small stall selling handmade journals. The woman behind the table smiled at me, not like a salesperson would, but like someone who recognized something special in my expression. She said, "You look as if you have stories waiting to be written." I bought a notebook. That evening, I opened it and jotted down a single sentence on the first page. I will not feel sorry for evolving beyond the version of myself that made others feel secure. This is not for them. It is for me. It serves as a reminder that I am not the antagonist in their narrative. I am the writer of my own. Maybe someday, if they truly wish to understand who I am, the genuine me and not the distorted figure they shape to suit their own desires, they will discover that side of me by themselves. But I am not waiting for that moment. I am not watching the mailbox for apologies. I am not scrolling through social platforms searching for signs of regret. I am not stuck in an emotional waiting room hoping they will change, because I have already transformed and I am proud of it. Honestly, I do not harbor hatred towards them. I do not desire their misfortune. I do not want them to crumble in my absence. I only wish they eventually see that love should not come with strings attached, that family should never mean possession, that kindness is not a weakness, and silence should not be mistaken for agreement. If they never come to understand this, that is all right as well, because I am no longer burdened by it. I am moving forward with less weight. My phone rings less. My mind feels more peaceful. My world might be smaller, but it is richer. I have surrounded myself with people who truly know me, not because I am generous with money, or because I always agree, but because they appreciate me for who I am and not just what I offer. This is the life I am creating. And if that designates me as the villain in someone else's tale, so be it. I would rather be the villain than the victim. I would prefer to step away instead of continuing to fake it. I want to embrace peace instead of acting out love. For the very first time in my existence, I have made this choice. This is neither an outburst nor a temporary stage. It is not a subtle signal or a quiet cry for help. This moment represents both a conclusion and a fresh start. My name is Celine, and at last I am truly